Hi, my name is Weijia. Today, I will present our work on context sensing for access control in an adversarial home IoT. Smart home devices are becoming increasingly popular, but access control is still often neglected. Even in cases where access control settings are offered, it is often very coarse-grained. However, in a user study we published at Username Security 2018, we found that users desire more fine-grained and more context-aware access control policies. For example, one participant wanted the user to have access to a resource only if the user is within a set range of the device. The necessary context is that a user is physically near a device. Another participant wanted their child to have access to a device only when an adult is around. Here, relevant contexts involve users' ages as well as people around the user. In total, in the previous study, we identified 10 common contexts that are important for access control. The entire list of desired contexts is shown here. The next question is, how can these contexts be detected in a reliable, secure, privacy-preserving, and usable way? In this work, we critically re-examine the sensing and context awareness literature with a security and privacy mindset. We began with a literature review of top conferences in sensing, ubiquitous computing, and HCI, collecting methods of detecting the 10 contexts from the last slide. We also examined commercial products. From this critical review, we mapped different sensors to each context. For example, here's our mapping for the identity context. To detect one's identity, we can use voice, facial features, or fingerprints. We use the term indicators to describe these features of the physical environment that can be directly detected by a sensor. For each indicator, we used our reviews of the literature and current products to identify relevant sensors for that indicator. For example, voice can be sensed by microphones, and some prior work also discusses how to add liveness detection to the process. One can sense facial features with a camera, and there are different kinds of cameras with different properties. In total, we found 94 sensing methods that can detect our 10 common contexts. This raises the question of how smart home designers, users, and researchers can select a particular sensing method from this long list for a particular context. As we build access control systems for smart homes, 3 criteria are critical: security, privacy, and usability. We then develop a framework of numerous important properties related to security, privacy, and usability that are critical for sensing context for access control purposes in smart homes. Next, I will detail our framework and some of our key observations. To talk about security, you of course first need to describe our threat model. Usually, when we think of an attacker, we will think of an expert who is attacking remotely. This type of attacker has been widely studied. The attacks they can launch, such as network DOS, are not specific to smart homes. While we consider such attackers, we also introduced a new type of adversary to smart home systems, which we call local attackers. They are residents of the home, but with a motivation to access devices they have not been granted access to. It could be a child trying to watch TV at midnight, a teenager trying to sneak out without being noticed, or a babysitter trying to go into areas they are told not to. They could be technical or non-technical, and they could have physical access to devices, or simply be near devices. Local attackers have a new dimension of text in which they can interfere with sensors and thus affect the effectiveness of access control systems. In addition, they often know their victim well and spend time with them, which gives them extra advantages in launching impersonation attacks. Let's return to our earlier example of a child who should only be able to interact with a given device when an adult is around. If a regular camera is used to detect a child, the child may get around it by holding up a picture of their parents. It does not require much technical knowledge to trick a naive camera. For sensing other contexts, such as detecting whether a room is empty, a very low-tech attack is often possible. A child or other non-technical adversary can simply just block the view of a camera or a motion sensor using a piece of paper or a toy. We call this a physical DOS attack on sensors. If the default policy is not well constructed, they may gain access in situations where they should not. Physical DOS attacks can take the form of either blocking a sensor or flooding the sensing channel. More broadly, we identified 5 key types of attacks on sensor systems in smart homes. While there is a large literature on adversarial examples or replay attacks, some of these other attacks are not as well studied. In addition to security, privacy is important for smart homes, and we consider 4 main properties. One of these is the desirable property that data should not leave one's home. Many smart home products will automatically upload data to your cloud. Therefore, our framework considers whether remote processing is actually necessary for each sensing method. For example, if we use a camera to identify someone based on facial features, then facial features are the only thing we need. But cameras inadvertently will pick up their surroundings and any bystanders. Video and image processing can be expensive in both storage and computation, so processing in the cloud might be necessary. For identifying that user in the future, the data has to be stored. We also further identified 8 usability considerations. How a sensor performs along these dimensions may impact whether a user is willing and able to adopt a particular sensor. This table summarizes the key security, privacy, and usability considerations we identified in our framework. We then evaluated these 94 sensors under this framework, which we present through a series of tables like this in our paper. We discovered that 68.1% of these sensing methods are vulnerable towards physical DOS attacks. Many of them were not developed for security purposes. Therefore, redundancy in the sensor system is critical for robustness against attacks. Default policies should also be carefully constructed so that a sensor being blocked or overwhelmed does not provide a point of access. We also noticed that although audio and video-based sensing methods are widely used, they are extremely vulnerable when they are applied without building defenses, like liveness detection. As we mentioned earlier, a child can use a photo of their parents to bypass access control system, unless the sensor has been carefully designed for security. However, liveness detection is often used to prevent impersonation, but not to prevent invisibility. A piece of paper is enough to block camera, no matter if it is a regular camera or a depth camera. This is a unique challenge for access control. We also observed that many sensing methods do not require computationally heavy processing. This means that it is possible to do all data processing locally in the home. Even for the handful of sensing methods that are computationally heavy, techniques like federated learning or edge computing could mitigate concerns. We also discovered that although we all know audio and video-based sensing are intrusive, they are indispensable for some contexts, such as age, one of the most frequently mentioned contexts in our user study. Our decision framework does not only help researchers evaluate a specific sensor, but it also helps smart home designers decide which sensor they should use for a given scenario. Let's return to our example of giving a child access to a device only when an adult is around. We need to know the age of the user and whether an adult is nearby. We prioritize security in this case because preventing the child from, for example, playing with a smart oven is important for safety. We care less about privacy as kitchen is a relatively public area. Microphones can be used for age estimation, but can be vulnerable. Therefore, adding liveness detection can mitigate impersonation attacks. Using RF sensors can also make sure there are at least 2 people in the room, making impersonation even harder. However, both methods are vulnerable to physical DOS. Therefore, it is also crucial to set up default policies carefully. For example, if nobody is detected, the oven should not be able to be opened. As the old saying goes, change is the only constant in life. There will always be new sensing methods, new threats, or new defenses showing up. Therefore, to keep things up to date, we have added our key evaluation tables and detailed explanations to GitHub, and we are accepting proposed modifications to it from the community. In summary, we proposed a new threat model for smart homes that considers local attackers, created and applied a decision framework that accounts for security, privacy, and usability, and discussed trade-offs among these criteria when deploying sensors for access control.